We've got our stars and skulls grades for the Steelers' win over the Rams, but also how the Steelers players are having input in and maybe even helping Matt Canada's game plan. All that and more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe this to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app that you can download right on your phone, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More on them later. Steelers fans, now that you've had time to revel in your victory Monday, it's time to go over things here on Tuesday. We'll get to the stars and skull grades in a minute, but I took time to review the All-22, breaking things down, and I have a lot of notes on things when we get to the grades parts. But one thing I saw with the offensive scheme was there's still a lot of the same things that we've seen that have been open and just not capitalized on. Some of it was capitalized more in this game. But you could see certain things that were maybe called more frequently or given the Steelers more opportunities to do things. And it kind of correlates with things we've heard certain players talk about. For example, last week, Mason Cole and Najee Harris talked about how during the bye week, they kind of sat down and went over things the offensive line likes, things the running backs like, and trying to put things together. And they went to Matt Canada with it. Kenny Pickett also talking about how, they're trying to get more things that he and his receivers identify with, and trying to put things together that can say, hey, these are the parts of the offense that we like more. What if we stick to these? Now, Matt Canada, it kind of acknowledged like, yeah, that happens, but it's also like something that happens all the time. And it's very true. Most offenses, that's kind of how it works, is that, the position coaches sit down with the players, and as you're practicing going over things, you kind of identify, hey, these are our strong points. This guy likes to pull a little bit more. This running back likes to hit the power runs versus the zone runs. This receiver likes to run these type of routes. It's getting more in these type of situations. You put all those together, and that's the job of an offensive coordinator, to make sure that all those mesh together well and come out in a game plan that allows those strengths to play well together. Now, again, as far as the elements of getting guys open, I've said for a while that, like, Matt Canada, that's not the problem with his offense. I think it's been getting his players to grasp when the opportunities are there and executing in those moments. But it seems like, at least with this Rams win, we got to see if they build on it, because we've seen, some promise and then some disappointment a lot this year with how they've played sometimes. But it seems like with this win, you saw elements in the Steelers' run game that we didn't see too much of. Like I talked about, there was a play where Najee Harris gained 10 yards. It was a really well-designed play. You had both the guards seal out interior defensive linemen. You had Dan Moore Jr. pull up into A-gap. He took on a linebacker. Mason Cole got another linebacker. And those 4 blocks right there allowed Najee Harris to scoot up the middle. He gets 10 yards, moves the chains on first down with a first down. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to see more often, more aggression. And you saw the offensive line feeding off it. And also, I wasn't there, but when you go back and you read the interviews and you see the clips that people who were covering the game and were in the locker room afterwards, you could see like the joy in Najee Harris and other players, especially on that offense, being like, this is who we want to be. We want to be bullies. We want to be able to push people around. We want to be able to do the things that we know what we can do, and show that we can do it, especially when it comes to running the football and building off of that and kind of sticking to it. Like when you talk about, hey, we get away from it sometimes, but we want to get back to it. And it all kind of balances with, Kenny Pickett's talked about how he's had input on things that he wants to see more in the offense, and that's where it's up to Matt Canada to make sure that those elements of the Steelers offense are more available readily to these players so that they're all kind of playing to this thing. Now, you still have to mix things up. You still have to try to keep your opponents off guard. But I saw lots of things that I thought were really interesting in the Steelers offense that I hadn't seen as much of leading up to this game. For example, there's been a lot of complaints about pre-snap motions, and that is something that I do think that Matt Canada does need to increase more. I think we saw more of that in this game. You saw runs out of the shotgun, passes out of from under center. You saw mixing it up a little bit more. And also, there were plays where you saw the pre-snap motion and Kenny Pickett using it to his advantage, because the Steelers have used pre-snap motion, but Kenny Pickett hadn't necessarily been able to use it to identify a whole lot of things. But I even did a thread of this on my Twitter account at Carter Critiques, where I was going over and I was saying, hey, like, look at this play here. They're using Connor Hayward in motion. When this guy follows, it clears out space for George Pickens, easy slant, 14 yards. And those are some of the easy yards that we've been talking about the Steelers need to have in their offense, where they can orchestrate a play where drawing it up, Kenny Pickett can read what the defense is, make a quick decision, get the ball out, and get easy yards to his playmaking wide receivers. And they did that more than a few times in this game. And I think that was the most impressive part of the offense, especially when they started clicking in the second half, was that there were some things that they were doing that you could tell were practiced, prepared for, and they were things they were looking for, and good reads by Kenny Pickett. And this is where I thought Kenny Pickett truly took a step forward in his ability to decipher defenses, because there were several different zone looks that that the Rams were throwing at him, and he was reading the middle safeties, he was understanding where they were going and what concepts they were throwing at him, and then he was figuring, okay, gotta go this way, gotta go that way. And sometimes he still panicked a little too much in the pocket, sometimes he did make mistakes. But by and large in this game, I thought that you saw him seeing the field. There was a play, I think it was an 11-yard out route in the third quarter, I want to say, when the Steelers were, I think, setting up. I think it was actually, I think it was the fourth quarter. It was the fourth quarter, excuse me. I think it was setting up the Jaylen Warren touchdown on that drive. But where Deontay Johnson's lined up, kind of bunched in on the formation. Everyone in the Rams is kind of lined off a bit. But once the play snapped, there's only one corner to the sideline where Johnson is, and Kenny Pickett recognized that along with a blitz and said, okay, just got to wait for Johnson to hit his break. As soon as he breaks, I'm throwing it to the sideline there, because that cornerback who's playing that sideline can't afford to jump this pass, because he has deep third responsibilities, and he can't let anyone get behind him or it's a touchdown. So, a lot of reads like that where, this Kenny Pickett was able to identify things, and also, other things that disguised other runs. Najee Harris's run, had a linebacker loaded up right in the middle of the formation, but he gets taken out of the play. Why? Because Connor Hayward, as the play was starting, was in a jet sweep motion that suggested that, oh, maybe he could be the threat to get the ball here. And that Mike linebacker that was in the middle of that defense waiting to hit Najee Harris, he follows Connor Hayward because he has to, because if he doesn't and he gets the ball, it's a problem, and it could be a touchdown that way. But when he follows Connor Hayward one way, it gives one less blocker for the offensive line to worry about, and for Najee Harris to worry about, and he gets into the end zone. And again, you saw the emotion coming from him as they were getting those touchdowns. Him and Jaylen Warren both being excited for each other. I think that this is where there's something real to build on with this Steelers offense, especially with Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, and what they're trying to put together. Still a long way to go. They haven't figured it all out. I'm not saying that they have. But these are the type of things that can build into an offense, finding rhythm, finding more abilities, and finding more chances to put points on the board and become a more consistent unit. And that's what the Steelers need right now, is they need some levels of consistency. I think they found some of it on Sunday. They need to keep pushing and find more of it before next Sunday when they take on the Jaguars. We'll get to our stars and skulls grades in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still have a lot to discuss in this episode in here, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. But first, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the number one place where people go to find jobs. So if you're an employer looking for jobs, this is the best place to find candidates. Every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, but when you use LinkedIn Jobs, it makes it easy to find the right people to fit your business and the right people you want to talk to faster and for free. All you have to do is create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs, and your job will reach out to your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then all you have to do is add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun that you can have, winning up to 25 times your money during football season. All you have to do is pick 2 or more players, say more or less on their projected stats given to you by Prize Picks, and you can win money on any entry. Prize Picks is a fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. If you're big into fantasy sports, this is a way to get your daily fix by selecting individual player projections and making a simple decision whether they'll get more or less of a set number of touchdowns, receptions, yards, sacks, you name it. The Prize Picks will let you pick it, and it's easy. Just pick 2 to 6 players that you can think of that you have a beat on their day in fantasy, and choose whether they'll get more or less than their projected stats by Prize Picks. And Prize Picks lets you make as many entries as you want. You can win up to 25 times your money on any of those entries. And with Prize Picks, they have a reboot policy that allows your plays to stay alive even if one of your players gets injured. For NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where every Tuesday Prize Picks discounts our select player projections are up to 25% off, providing even more value. And remember, this also goes for all the major sports. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com, sign up today, and play daily fantasy sports. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL for a $100 first deposit match when you sign up at prizepicks.com. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here, and it's time for our Stars and Skulls grades for the Steelers-Rams game. Now, we're going to switch up the pace as Harley does. Normally, we start with the stars. I think when we win, we're going to start with the skulls here. For a reminder, if you don't know what our stars and skulls grades are, it's just the rubric that we use here to have some fun talking about the games after we've had a chance to look over the film. The more stars you get, the better. The more skulls you get, the worse. So one star means you had a good play with a decent day. 2 stars mean a great play with a good day. 3 stars mean an all-time elite performance. Skulls in reverse. 1 skull just means you had a bad play, never really redeemed yourself. 2 skulls means you had a bad game as a whole. 3 skulls means you were all-time terrible. We've had a lot of those this season. But let's start with the skulls here. And here's the thing. I only have 2 guys that I could honestly give skulls for in this game. One of them wasn't that harsh. We'll start off with the 1 skull grade, the only 1 skull grade that I gave that in this game, and that was Keanu Neal. And this isn't a huge knock on Neal. He made some plays in this game. He was in the right position a few times, but by and large, you saw him getting beat on a 3rd down to the sideline. He wasn't making a huge difference in the run game. He was helping at times, but Keanu Neal, I felt like, made some mistakes in this game. And if there was a weak link in the secondary for this other outside of the guy who received 2 stars in this grade, it would be Keanu Neal. Now let's get to that 2-star grade. And this kind of brings up an interesting question about the secondary, because the 2-star grade, I think everyone can kind of see it. It's 2 skull grade, excuse me, not 2 stars, 2 skull grades. I apologize for doing my skulls before my stars here. But our 2 skull grade, and our only 2 skull grade of this game was Levi Wallace. Now, some people might be asking about Patrick Peterson. We'll get to him in a little bit, because I think some people might be surprised about a few things here. But Levi Wallace, when I look back at this game, there were just too many plays where he was the guy that was off. And the reason I didn't give him 3 skulls is because there were times that he was good in coverage. There were times that he looked like he was in the right spot, and he provided a tight coverage window that Matt Stafford wouldn't go at. But that Tutu Atwell touchdown was pretty rough. There were other plays where he looked beaten, unable to adjust to things. And this is a disappointment for Levi Wallace, because I thought he was trending upwards after his first couple really bad games for the Steelers. So Levi Wallace, Keanu Neal, your only skull grades this week. But I think that this is again a part of it. Now, people are going to be saying, "Well, Chris, what about the run defense? Why isn't that getting penalized more? Why isn't that getting more skulls?" Well, we'll get to some of those grades and some of the people who I gave neutral grades in a bit here, but I looked back over this game, and a lot of the guys who were on the team who I thought made mistakes that would have deserved at least 1 skull in this game, they had those redemption plays. And that's why I put that caveat there, and I always have. That rubric has existed since we started this last year. But when I look at the game, either you're kind of even keel, or you're really good, or you're really bad, or you're slightly good, or you're slightly bad. And there were a lot of the guys who, didn't play a great game on the defensive line, but they were doing enough. And when we were looking at that, especially on that defensive front, there were so many guys who you could say, hey, they could have done better, and that would have actually cemented their place, in the stars, and but they didn't. So there's I look at how this defensive line played, and guys like DeMar Leal, guys like Keanu Benton, even Armin Watts in this game, Travius Adams, they all had very positive plays in this game at times. And yes, there were times where I think they could have been better collectively as part of a unit against the run. But by and large, I think that this unit was pretty solid, which is why I only gave 2 skull grades in here. One was a 2 sculler, one was a 1 sculler. But those were really the main negatives that I took away from this game as far as that. And listen, there was other negative things to look at. Of course, you want the offense to score faster. You want the defense to not give up those 2 touchdowns. All those things aside, I just look at the Steelers right now, and I see I see a team, especially when it comes to the defensive front. They're figuring things out. They're kind of coalescing. They're putting things together on how to stop the run, but they're individually making plays. And that's what's interesting about this group right now, is that's why I gave some of these guys neutral grades and some of these guys stars, because they made plays even when they got beat in certain situations. So let's get into some more of these grades here. I'm going to start with a simple one, because we're going to do this very differently. Normally we build up with stars. We're going to start with our 3 stars first, because there's only one player I actually gave a 3-star grade here, and that was their kicker, Chris Boswell, because yet again, he's perfect in the NFL. He keeps knocking it down. And Chris Boswell, he might be the best kicker in the NFL right now. And I know Justin Tucker is Justin Tucker, and historically he's better and he has a stronger leg and blah, 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 blah. But everyone else is missing kicks across the NFL everywhere except Chris Boswell. And I think he deserves praise for that. So that's that being there. Now we'll get to why some of the other players that you're probably thinking of weren't 3 stars. But I'm telling you right now, I almost ran out of space for my 1 stars. And I think this is the most 2-star grades that I've ever given for a Steelers game since I've started doing this. So lots of fun to break down here. We'll do that all here in the Locked On Steelers podcast in just a minute. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Still got a lot to discuss here, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we want to remind you that this show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the #1 way that you need to go buy tickets, where buying tickets for your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They give you killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have a best price guarantee that just can't be beat. The Game Time app that you can download right to your phone allows you to book tickets up to the last minute, or even as far out as an hour after your event has started. And the great thing about it is when you go on the app on Game Time, you see the exact view from the seat that you're purchasing, so you know you're getting what you're paying for, and you know what you're paying. Because one thing that Game Time also promises, they're not going to slap you with hidden fees. They're going to put everything up front, so all you have to do is click 2 buttons and you've got your tickets. And Again, the best price guarantee, it can't be beat on Game Time. All you have to do with Game Time is if you find that there are tickets in the same section in a row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Or go to the website GameTime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our stars and skulls grades. Now, we've gone over the 1 skull, the 2 skulls. There are no 3 skulls, and the 3-star grades here. But let's go into these 1-star and 2-star grades that I have, and this will allow me to kind of talk more about the game and different aspects that we didn't get a chance to because we've now had more of a chance to see the all 22 film. Okay, let's go over a few things. One, Cole Holcomb, I'll read through all the grades on screen for those who are listening on our audience. All your 1-star grades go as follows. Linebacker, Cole Holcomb. Defensive lineman, DeMarvin Leal, Keanu Benton. Outside linebacker, Nick Herbig. Safety, DeMonte KZ. Defensive lineman, Armin Watts, Marcus Golden, edge rusher there. Tight end, Connor Hayward. Cornerback, Patrick Peterson. Defensive lineman, Montravius Adams. Punter, Presley Harvin. Darnell Washington at tight end. Isaac Seumalo, Chuks Okorafor on the offensive line, as well as James Daniels and Larry Ogunjobi. Now, again, there's 2-star grades to be handing out. So if you're still waiting for where the player that you were most excited to hear about for doing well in this game, don't worry, it's coming. But let's go into some of these names here as far as why I have them at 1-star grades. I'll start at the top here with Cole Holcomb. I think Cole Holcomb is really coming along for the Steelers. I think he's starting to really figure out how he fits in, how he can help tackle, how he can help in coverage and be in the right spots. And there were some times in this game where he did just that. He had 6 tackles officially. 4 of those were plays where he stopped his tackle stopped the play in a winning situation for the Steelers. He's figuring it out. He's getting to the right places. He still has to do that more consistently. He knows that. The Steelers know that. That's why he got a 1-star grade instead of getting a bigger grade there. Because of that situation, because of how things have played out, especially with the run game. There were sometimes he was the guy who was late to the hole, but still, again, overall, good showing from Cole Holcomb. DeMarvin Leal is another guy where he had some really splashy plays, a play where he kind of had to run stuff right at the line of scrimmage. He had some other moments where he looked pretty sharp, but still was part of that defensive line that was getting pushed around a little bit at times, and you want to see more consistency from him. Now, the one guy that's kind of gets a reprieve from that D-line assessment there is Keanu Benton. And the only reason he doesn't have 2 stars is because he only played 19 snaps in this game, which I still don't understand why. Our friend and actually one of the original, I think the original host of this show way back in the day, John Ledyard, brought up, he's like, why aren't the Steelers just using Keanu Benton more? He seems so good. And he is. The guy had 3 tackles. He hit the quarterback twice. He had 3 pressures in total in this game, and only in 19 sacks. Get Keanu Benton out there more. I think that with a higher rate of usage, he's gonna be a baller sooner rather than later. Another guy got on this list, Nick Herbig, who got his first career sack, but he also had a really good run stuff as well. Nick Herbig, we saw him throughout camp. We hadn't seen him in the regular season much. He stepped up in this moment, got pressure, and was able to show that explosiveness that we saw all throughout camp that made him tough to stop. DeMonte KZ, whereas I gave a tough grade for Keanu Neal, I felt like this was a good week by DeMonte KZ with the way that he was able to play the play that he showed he could still be a big hitter, he could still come up and help. And he kind of fit in there. Armin Watts, another guy who didn't play a whole lot of snaps. He had, I think, 17 total snaps in this game, but Armin Watts, talent is tough to find consistently on the defensive line, but Armin Watts was able to move some piles, and that helped out the Steelers, as was Marcus Golden coming off the bench. Really helpful there. Not a huge stat day for him, but he was certainly making his presence felt. Another guy, Connor Hayward, I thought he was honestly the best that we'd seen blocking at the tight end position this year. And that's saying a lot because Darnell Washington's on this list, and I thought he blocked well. But Connor Hayward, he looked pretty solid, and he's the Steelers know they can throw the ball to him. I don't know why they'll throw the ball to Darnell Washington, because again, he keeps getting left alone, but that's all another debate for another day. But again, Connor Hayward doing what he's supposed to do. Now, I'm going to go to Patrick Peterson here, because if someone's looking at me and thinking, oh my gosh, Chris, what are you thinking putting Patrick Peterson on the star list? He had a good game. And I know that if you probably look on like PFF or anywhere that charts the passes and everything, he's charged with what, allowing 3 catches on 4 targets for 57 yards. It's not great or anything like that. But Patrick Peterson is becoming a multi-tool player for the Steelers secondary. And I think we're starting to see the glimpse of that now, that the Steelers have played with him for about six games or so going into this past game. Or no, 6 games going into this game. But we talked about how in camp we saw him line up inside. Patrick Peterson we're talking about there, and Joey Porter Jr. might go outside. We're seeing that now. And we're seeing payoffs for it. He's blitzing at the right times. He's stuffing the run at the right times. He's matching up and creating tough situations for good wide receivers out there. I think that's what you want to see from him. In fact, I did a whole thread on this on my Twitter account where I went over just film from the game Sunday on Patrick Peterson whenever he was lining up on the inside, and how I think that's been a boost to the Steelers, because now it's another body who has good instincts, who's able to help communicate and keep things together up front. And again, allows Minkah Fitzpatrick to kind of be in whatever role he feels he needs to be the Steelers' ultimate playmaker in the secondary. So lots of things to break down about, about the situation and how things have played out with Patrick Peterson. He's still not an outside corner. He still doesn't have that top end speed anymore. Patrick Peterson, though, he is fitting in well in this defense, and they're finding roles for him. And I think that's what good teams do, is they find ways to use players at the best of their abilities at the best of their times. So with all that being said, let's keep moving forward here on the 1-stars. Montravius Adams. At first, I was going to give Montravius Adams 2 stars, but thing is he's just as big of a culprit as the run getting going for the Rams as he's as big of a he was as big of a proponent in stopping it at times. So Montravius Adams 1 star. Presley Harvin, didn't boot. He had a couple boomers, had a couple good ones. I think he'll continue to get better. Darnell Washington, good blocker. I don't know what I throw to him. Then the offensive line, I gave 3 members of the offensive line 1-star grades, simply because I thought that they could have done more in this game. But still held their own, did solid jobs in Seumalo, Okorafor, and Daniels, and also threw in Larry Ogunjobi, who did get a sack, but also I felt there were plays where he kind of could have been better against the run as well for the Steelers. And now for the long-awaited 2-star list for the Steelers, let's get into who actually was making a difference here in this. So again, looking at our 2-star grades here, we have Kenny Pickett with his first 2-star grade of the season. And some people might be saying, well, he didn't throw a touchdown, but he made some crucial plays, especially in the 4th quarter, going on fire. I gave him credit for that because I thought he started to really process the field in this game. That's why he gets a 2-star grade. I also gave 2-star grades to his wide receivers, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Even outside of just the plays that they made when they were throwing the ball, they were getting open pretty consistently in this game. And they deserved credit for that. Yes, they made some bonehead plays. If George Pickens didn't make some of the bonehead plays that he did, maybe he would have a 3-star grade. But by and large, these receivers, they're showing they can be difference makers. The offense can be better when they are on the field, for sure. Dan Moore Jr., I actually give a 2-star grade, which is interesting because I gave Broderick Jones a 2-star grade last time, right? And it now has me looking at like, man, like, what do you do there? Except, you can play Broderick Jones if you want, but Dan Moore Jr.'s playing, and he's playing well. Dan Moore Jr., again, he was pulling, he was hitting, he was physical, he was getting downhill, and in pass protection, he was doing a solid job. I thought he was the best offensive lineman this week, and that's crazy to think with how he had played earlier this season. But again, this is one of those things where I say, like, hey, I'm not the Steelers. I don't see practice, every day the way they do. I'm not in the meeting rooms to see everything that they do. Maybe they know something, and here, at least for this game, seemed like they did. I also gave Najee Harris and Jalen Warren both 2-star grades. Not that they had spectacular stats days, but both of those guys stepped up in huge moments for this Steelers team to keep them alive. Najee Harris, the reception that he had after the TJ Watt interception was just spectacular to haul that in, dodge the defender, tiptoe the sideline, and dive to get to the ball to the 1-yard line so that Kenny Pickett could get his his QB sneak in just a play later. If he doesn't make that play, they probably don't score a touchdown on that drive, and the Steelers might even lose this game. Jalen Warren also with his touchdown run, both were really good in pass protection. That's really why I gave them 2-star grades, because there were several times both of them stoned somebody to keep Kenny Pickett alive. Also, Minkah Fitzpatrick led the team in tackles, but also was flying all over the place. There were also some plays, and again, going back to some of those Patrick Peterson plays with how he was being used in the secondary, there were plays where Patrick Peterson was lining up in the slot, lining up outside, lining up here, there, and everywhere, but they were trying to find ways to confuse Matt Stafford with where he was and where Minkah Fitzpatrick was. And there was one play, in fact, it was the last pass from Matt Stafford in this game. It was a 3rd and 10, and the Steelers come out in like a different kind of lineup. And what happens is instead of Minkah Fitzpatrick dropping back as the deep safety in the middle part of the field, Patrick Peterson did that. And Minkah Fitzpatrick kind of just roamed in the robber role, intermediate, waiting over the middle. Puka Nacua broke to that spot, was trying to take over that spot of the field. Minkah Fitzpatrick locked right onto it, was about to pick it if Matt Stafford threw it to him. Matt Stafford, was about to seize it, and then as soon as he sees that, he throws it away to live another day. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, still that guy. He still is that guy. He just hasn't been in that position to create turnovers as much this year. Also got to give also realized I think I might have left out Alex Highsmith out of the 1-star grades, and that's a mistake on my part. So Alex Highsmith got a 1-star grade because he was actually doing really well in this game as well. So I apologize for that. That will be a retro fix as well. But TJ Watt, his interception, game-changing. He got 2 pressures in this game, a tackle, didn't dominate on the edge as much as possible. As I said before, the Rams were trying to scheme him out. The Rams were trying to make sure that he wasn't the dominant edge rusher along with Alex Highsmith. They were trying to make sure, and they did that job. But TJ Watt, the way he made that interception, the more I watch it, the more I'm impressed by it, because it wasn't just that he jumped the pass. He dropped back into his zone, and he broke on that ball before Matt Stafford threw it, and he broke on it as Cooper Kupp was breaking into that part of his route. That had to be some serious film study and to understand that tendency of when that ball was coming and how that ball was coming for him to jump it and make that huge of a play, and in such a huge unconventional way for him. I know he's made interceptions, but that looked like Fred Warner type stuff at inside linebacker, the way that he broke on the ball. So again, TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year, get out of the way. Everyone else, that's his award. He's also now the only other person not named Lawrence Taylor to have 70 sacks and 7 interceptions in his first 7 seasons. Craziness. I also put Mason Cole here. I know people are probably saying, what? Mason Cole? Oh my God, 2 stars? Hear me out. None of the pressure that got to Kenny Pickett in this game, or could have gotten to Kenny Pickett in this game, came from Mason Cole. Pass protection, he locked it down. And I think he was a huge part. When I went back and looked at some things, I think he was a huge part in helping identify where and how they needed to double team Aaron Donald to keep him from wrecking the game. And if you do stuff like that in the middle part of the offensive line, everyone else is going to feed off of you. I think Mason Cole absolutely was fed off of by the rest of the offensive line in this game, and he deserves a 2-star grade. And of course, last but not least, Joey Porter Jr. That kid looks for real. And I mean that. I'm not just trying to hype people up. I'm not trying to just do that as an exciting thing for the podcast. Joey Porter Jr. looks for real. In coverage, yes, he needs to work on his tackling. Absolutely, we get that. But like, there were routes that he ran with Cooper Kupp, blanketed him. Just took him out the play. The plays where he was covering Puka Nacua, and Puka Nacua was trying to push off, but he was doing just enough to say, "Hey, I'm not letting you push off, but I'm not getting called for a penalty." Joey Porter Jr. might be something special. Again, we still haven't seen him for a whole season yet. Still haven't seen him for half a season. We're still building what we know. But Joey Porter Jr. as a corner right now, he looks like he could be the truth. He looks like he could be the guy the Steelers have been looking for. He still has a lot to show, still has a lot to grow, and he will grow. But if you're the Steelers right now, you got to be happy with where he's at. So again, there are stars and skulls grades we had here. The only 3-star grade, of course, was Chris Boswell, who we mentioned earlier, but lots of 2 stars, lots of 1 stars, very few skulls. That's a good place to be for the Steelers. And if you're probably wondering, well, why weren't there more 3 stars? Well, I think this was a more balanced performance by the Steelers. And that was what was impressive about the win. It wasn't taking a superstar Herculean effort from one player, though it'd be nice to get that from, all your players or whatever. But it didn't take, Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt winning the game by themselves. Basically, it took team effort across the board for the win. And I think that's where I come down on and say, like, you know what? I don't think there were too many 3-star grades. I think there were 1s and 2s, and they did pretty well. So all that to say, I hope you enjoyed the Stars and Skulls segment. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube if you disagree with any of our grades, if there's anyone I missed here. Sometimes it does happen. We do retro grades where I go back and I correct myself like I will with Alex Highsmith. He deserved a star in this game because he was getting after it as well. Thanks again for everyone for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast Monday through Friday, talking to you about your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast on your favorite podcasting app and on YouTube. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back Wednesday. We do apologize. We didn't get Alan Saunders on this show because his schedule was pretty busy. My schedule was pretty busy. He's traveling back. We're going to try to have him on the Wednesday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. So stay tuned for that right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.